Dear Heavenly Father, God, we just come to you, Father, just thanking you, Father, for all that you do for us, Father. You just calm us when we're stressed, Father. You just do so much for us, Father. We are so blessed. And Father, I just, you know our hearts up here, and we just pray, Father, over the city, Father, and that we just pray, Father, that your your will be done, Father, in everything possible, Father. Father, and I just pray, Father, for um, anything, Father. You teach us, Father, that our job is uh, to see things, Father, that maybe isn't in alignment with your goals, Father, and your will, Father, and that we are to keep your order, Father. And I just pray, Father, that that can be continue to be done, Father, and that we stick together and just do those things, Father, for you, Father, for the citizens of this great town, Father. We love Borger, Father, and we thank you for Borger, and we know that Borger is being built, Father, for you, Father. And I just praise you, Father, and I thank you for these council members, Father, that we serve with, Father, and it's just a blessing, Father, to serve with these council, Father, and a blessing to just support the people that work in the city, Father, the employees of the city, Father. We have such great employees, and I'm just so thankful for them. And I just ask, Father, that you bless them all in such a mighty way, Father, and that you just continue to bless our city, Father. And I just love you, Father, and I just praise your name. Amen. At this time, we will have any questions or comments from any citizen that would like to speak. And I see none. So we'll just move on to the city manager's monthly report.
So, starting with financial overview real quick, you see everything's pretty much still on target. We're about the February report is almost halfway through. March will be halfway through the fiscal year, so we're still trending pretty well. Sales tax is right on our budget estimates. March was down about 5%, so we're still kind of keeping an eye on that, seeing how that goes. We did expect it to come down a little bit after all the turnarounds were out. Water, sewer, and our expenses are still on target as well. Hot tax is still trending higher based on our turnaround at the start of the year. So we're already about 60% of our revenue collected in the tourism fund, with just another 4 months left to go, give or take. We don't have a whole lot of projects kind of like in active construction right now. We're kind of, we finally finished some of those. We're still waiting on our final permit for the well 13 replacement to start producing. We do expect that sometime in April, so that one's getting pretty close right now. The sewer replacement project under the Cloverleaf is out for bid, and we're finalizing the plans for the well 24, which is the new well in the Northwest well field. That one should be ready for a bid later this year for construction in next fiscal year. So going through our department updates, HR, of course, starting their busy season. If you haven't noticed, we've released all of our seasonal hiring openings for lifeguard concession and park and rec aid. So we're getting ready to do all of that. That's, I think, a pretty good opportunity for the youth of our community to get some pretty good work experience. I take pride in the fact that a lot of times the city is the first job that a lot of our youth have, and we try to, give them a pretty good experience with that. Of course, that's gone back for quite a ways, but we also have some other hirings, and we're filling in wastewater, water. Dispatch has an opening, and fire and police. So we're making some progress there, but definitely been some hirings going on. And the fire department, Lieutenant Mendoza completed his Type 1 task book. They also taught CPR to a bunch of BISD staff members, getting them ready for that. We also got our hosted wildland refresher training. We actually also had 2 cities come up and look at our apparatus. They were considering purchasing a Seagrave, so we got to show off some of our apparatus for some other communities down in the Metroplex area. In wildfire mitigation, Derek Holstack has completed his Fowler 3 certification and his Firefighter 1. So that's a fancy term for a chainsaw operator. There is a little more to it than that. Which is why it's got a fancy name, but that is what that is. Also completed our prescribed burn around the airport. You might have been aware of that. And of course, we've definitely been pretty high staff with the wildfire danger here the last couple of weeks. We've survived our two windstorms pretty good around here. You will probably notice some more Texas Fire Service personnel in town again this last couple of days. I know a couple of bulldozers and their team out at the Holiday Inn Express right now. Did in the last month complete a lease agreement for an office space in City Hall for the Forest Service. They'll be using that temporarily while they're waiting to take over the airport, the hangar at the airport for their operations there. So we expect them to be here for a little bit, but then we'll have a permanent presence, which I think will benefit all of us having that resource here and then having a little more direct contact into that. So we're excited about that. EMS, so our ambulance we thought was going to be here in March has been pushed to May. So that's the ambulance that was supposed to be here in March, which was supposed to be here in February, which was supposed to be here in November, which was supposed to be here the June before, which was supposed to be here April before originally.
This is for this May.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we are still progressing, I think, but supposedly this is a firm deadline, but
They reaffirmed it.
yeah. So we'll see. We have, like I said, we've hired all but one position for the staffing of the third ambulance. So we've got that going pretty well. And from what I can understand, from what I can listen, we're handling that really well. And that's definitely started spreading some things around. So we're been able to respond to that pretty quick. And the police department, starting with animal services. So Candace, Animal Control Officer Candace Caldwell, she was out helping plant trees. For those of you who might have gotten to interact with her, she was definitely quite gung-ho in her tree planting. She's also gone through some shelter training. Daryl helped with the snack pack for kids. And then they're still getting ready for their Tri-City Partners event May 2nd. Yes. There is later in the report. I think they do
that just for you.
I know they do, and I'm not for sure how I should take that, if that's a positive or a negative.
Think of you as a partner.
Yeah, well, there's probably something I should say, but I won't. But then in the PD, Lieutenant Guzman completed his Leadership Command College through the Law Enforcement Management Institute of Texas. So that's, a pretty big deal. It's over 3 sessions that are, I think, 6 weeks each, 4 weeks each, 3 weeks each, 3 sessions, 3 weeks each, 12 weeks. So that's a big deal. Also hosted 2 trainings locally. They help with snack packs for kids. Did get some drone images with the prescribed burns and some of the wildfires going on. So we've been kind of refining that. And of course, they did help with the Ripple Effect, which was our distracted driving simulation out at the high school. Of course, we had a lot of partners with that. We'll talk about that a little bit in Deidre's section. In emergency management, do have 2 new hires going through training and dispatch. IT's also got about 90% of the multi-factor authentication rolled out in the police department. That's what we've kind of been talking about with the data card. So you'll have to insert your card and sign in. So we're starting with the police department as a sample with that. They've got the need for the most security for, particular access to criminal justice databases and things like that. So that's been going pretty well. So once that,
They'll sign into the computer with that. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
yeah, both in the department and their in-car computers. And then eventually we will do that in the city as well. So that's giving us it makes it harder to hack. So, as we kind of keep employing higher security standards following our 2018 ransomware attack, we've been slowly been rolling out things. So that should make that easier. We went with the cards versus text messaging because maybe not everybody might not have a cell phone, or we didn't want to necessarily have to issue everybody a city cell phone just to access that. And so the cards serve dual purpose. They are recognized by the state too for some of our incident access and things if we've got another major emergency. So that's going pretty well. It won't impact y'all because you don't access any of the systems. You're just accessing email.
Change our emergency card. Where we go.
If you got one from the state, you don't need one from us. If you don't have one from the state, you can use the one from us. So like you got one from the state and some of us got one from the state. But if you need one like that, Jason, we can take care of all that. So, but if you've already got one that they look almost exactly the same as this, except that it's got like the state logo on it and not the city logo. But that is good. That's why part of the reason we went with this system, because it does play with the state's credentialing system. We're also working through the safety fair. If you remember, that's coming up next month in April. So they've got a good number of booths registered this year. So we're hoping to have a little better turnout this year with our safety fair. So if you remember, there's a lot of good information there. You know, Excel brings out their little ARC trailer, and Golden Plains is there, and all those little things to kind of get some information on and different safety and how to respond. TxDOT's normally there with their little simulated crash trailer thingy, and so we're looking forward to that. And we also been having regular meetings with TDM and our local nonprofits. So we actually do have contact information and got it at 2 churches now set up in Viochi for our co-ad, so that we've got that better communication with our nonprofits for when we need shelter support or other things in bigger emergencies. So we're trying to work through and improve that. So that's going on pretty well. In code enforcement, Bradley is completed his code enforcement class now. So now he's just waiting for his time to earn his certification. So he's working through that. And we kind of talked about this, I think, in our work session, but I haven't mentioned in public. But the right-of-way crew has been out working on edging the new the TxDOT sidewalks and trying to get them cleaned up a little bit. And we have been spraying to try to prevent the weeds from growing up so much this year. You know, we kind of warned you about that while TxDOT was nice putting them in, we were pretty sure it wasn't going to come with extra money to maintain them. And sure enough, it hasn't, but we have taken little steps. So hopefully our pre-emergent we'll keep the weeds down at least a little bit this year after we get them all cleaned up. I think might have mentioned last month, but the state has changed there. We don't have to have a separate right-of-way endorsement for our spray license anymore. So anybody that has a spray license now can spray in the right-of-way. That has generally been our limiting factor, is who was certified to spray in the right-of-way. So by the state doing away with that, it's really opened up the number of employees we have that can take care of that. They're also in the middle of another demolition now at McGee Street and Lee. So we are working through some of that. So then with Public Works, of course, recreation, we talked about HR being busy hiring. Well, of course, that also puts that work on recreation. So they are getting ready for the summer season. We're getting in the early stages of planning for the swim season. So we'll get a date. We're going to do what we've been doing the last couple of years, have a city employee early opening day to kind of help train the lifeguards and give them some experience before we just open it up to the public and let them have at it. So we'll get you dates for that if council would like to be there for that. But it will be easier this year. So this is the first, last year we were kind of waiting for the pool to get finished and had a few things coming up to the last minute. So this year's our first real year with the renovated pool. It's had water in it all winter. So, that really reduces the amount of prep work. So we should be able to be ready to go a little easier this year. I know that it's always, depending on weather, they're always stressing when they can fill it up and when they can get the pool in there and when they can do training with the lifeguards. So this year should be much easier with that. Of course, we still have quite a few lifeguards returning again this year. Last 2 years, we've returned about 70% of our lifeguards. So I think that speaks well for their experience with Manny and Isaac out there and all that they do. So in solid waste, we are still waiting for the chassis for our new trash truck. So apparently commercial chassis are having a bit of a lead time delay again. So we haven't got a word on when that chassis is going to be there. We do have one opening in solid waste and one opening in streets. We've got the street opening. We've got a person we're going to do an internal transfer to fill that one. So we've got that one identified. Solid waste is still looking. Parks Department, of course, they were busy with all the trees for Houston. So we did plant 35 trees in Huber Park, in Cofield Park. And then we had quite a few extras. So I put some more. You've probably seen them out in Huber Park. And then we put some up in Santa Fe Park as well. And they're kind of going through those. So that was a good deal. We're also in the process of installing the new park signs for the new park regulations that were recently passed. So we've got the signposts in, getting ready to raise those. So we'll probably start. That'll be ready to be enforced here shortly, so that we are progressing through that. Also did some other improvements to Santa Fe Park. Got some new sands put in there. Also some benches. And so the street department, it's between Gardner and Evergreen on Santa Fe Street. So it's like a block over and a block up from Yucca Park, which is off of Evergreen. That does it. Santa Fe and Tech. Yeah. It's, my street knowledge from all those years driving them as a cop, it's getting older and older, and I keep
Yes, we are.
but they're working on repairs to some swing sets and some other new stuff there. Of course, finance has been busy with the audit, so we'll talk about that when we get to that items on our agenda today. Christy and Sarah also helped plant some trees. So they got they earned their trees or at least Sarah took a tree home. I don't know if Christy took a tree home, but they earned the trees that they got. I still find it funny. We did have a few trees stolen the night before, so someone actually stole free trees that if they would have just shown up the next day, they could have taken. I don't know if they, thought that they weren't going to get good ones or what, but it takes all types. We're also in the early stages. Terry normally coordinates our internship program, so we're in the early stages of probably posting summer internships for this year. We did talk about we've got a partnership that's probably going to be on the next council agenda with WT, which will help fund one of those positions. So we'll probably work through that. Terry also completed the T600, which is the disaster finance class. So that was glad she went and not me. But as we've learned, that disaster finance is definitely a little more involved with that. And then we will talk a little bit more when we get the audit, but as we've mentioned, both our audit, our budget, and our popular annual financial report for 2024 was all recognized by the GFOA for their outstanding presentation awards. So that makes us a GFOA Triple Crown Award winner. There are less than 200 cities nationwide that have earned that designation. So I think that shows our commitment to transparency and doing things the right way in all of our financials. So I'm pretty excited about that. In City Secretary and Court, Everly is getting ready to go to the TMCCA training. She's working on her Court Clerk 2 certification. So we're excited about that. And of course, Stella's getting ready for the election. On your next agenda, you will have an updated notice. We learned this week, actually today or yesterday, relatively soon, that we cannot be open on San Jacinto Day for early voting because that's a state holiday, and the state says this year for the first time that we can't be open on their San Jacinto Day holiday. So we're going to have to revamp the notice a little bit because it's at the 21st. Mm-hmm. So April 21st, we will not be having early voting. So we'll get the updated schedule for that. But we also don't have to have voting on Good Friday this year so early voting schedule is going to be a little bit unique because of that because Easter always, is always a weird date. Or the date that Easter is more complicated. It's not, so it doesn't always fall during early voting. It does this year. Plus, I don't know why we've never heard of the San Jacinto holiday thing before, because I know that probably has fallen on early voting probably every year. So, but it's the state, so sometimes you learn just to not ask questions. But there will be early voting sometime between April 20th and 28th, except for the 21st and Good Friday. The 28th will be our 12-hour day, and of course, Election Day is May 2nd, which is Saturday. So this does include both places for the City Council and then our special election following the petition for the legalized sale of all alcoholic beverages. So both of those will be on there May 2nd. As we get into the downtown program, Nicole's been busy on our Q1 reporting to the Texas Historical Commission. We did get our grant submitted to the community portion of the grant application to the Texas Department of Agriculture. So they've actually extended applications through April 7th. Generally, I think that maybe I'm being optimistic, but I'm hoping that means they didn't have a whole lot of applicants, so that they're trying to get more, which maybe means we've got a better shot. After looking at the list, remember this year, since we are now a Texas Main Street city, we're only competing against other Main Street cities because we're in the set-aside program. And then based on of those cities, that's only the ones that are non-entitlement cities, which are cities under 100,000. So if every Main Street city put an application, we're only competing against 60, to where normally when we are in the general program, we're competing against 200 or 300. So we'll see, but I'm hopeful for that one. We've also, if you've noticed, if you watched any of their Behind the Doors series, we've started the downtown program, started doing the Behind the Doors series on Facebook, where they go through some of the abandoned and currently occupied buildings on downtown. We've actually had pretty good response from those. They've been averaging 20,000 views, and the biggest one had over 31,000 views. So that's getting some pretty good following on getting people to see the benefits and hopefully start thinking about some possibilities for our buildings downtown. Of course, Nicole's also been working with emergency management on the COAD, so she's kind of taking the lead as our volunteer liaison for that. So we are working with that. We're also working on identifying a muralist for the front of. We're finishing systems. We've got the project coming up where they're going to EFS the front of the Quonset hut and fence down there. So we're going to get a good centennial mural, try to put up there in time for, if it works, hopefully in time for the First Lady of Texas visit. Remember, she is coming in May to officially designate us as a Main Street city. They also, in part of their coordination, reached out with the West Texas A&M Enterprise Center, working on other resources for businesses. And during that, they also got tied in with, and I don't know if it was volunteered or voluntold or wrapped in, but they're now on the Women's Conference Planning Committee for the region. And so we're hoping to bring the International Women's Conference that Amarillo hosts to a Borger next year at the Dome. Have some definitely good movement with the Dome. We're looking at the prep conferences likely might be here next year as well. And so, of course, we've got the TML regional meeting coming up. So we're starting to get a little more bigger events for that. And we're excited about that. Nicole, I have given her the green light on our downtown momentum grant through the tax increment reinvestment zone. So it's just a matter of getting the tiers board together. So we'll probably have that approved, and that'll probably be on the council agenda for the second meeting in April. And so then we'll be able to start investing in some of the improvements in downtown with that. I know that's been a long project. The tiers has been in place since 2018. When we started it, we kind of said that, it takes a long time for that to get kind of established to where you've got some opportunities to do things. The Amarillo downtown tiers, it was about 15 years before they started seeing some good movement with it. So we're about 8 years in. So we're excited to see what that will do. And Nicole also has been working with the Ogallala Commons out in the nature trail with some of their wetland restoration projects. They've been out there doing some work down there. So we were excited for that. I know that Nicole's ankles might not have been excited for the trek down there, but they got her some good work. Then in with public engagement, of course, we did do the ripple effect this last month. That was a really good turnout. We had lots of good feedback from both the students and the participants, especially from Andrea's project that partnered with us. So they complimented on all of our involvement, and they were surprised to see how many people from all of our public safety agencies were involved in all of that. Had some really good volunteers to make that work. Also working on all of our summer events and getting ready for the Centennial Boomtoberfest coming up. So don't forget, summer will be here before you know it. We've got the second Saturdays of Summer series, along with the fourth on Main, still coming again. Of course, they also coordinate with the Trees for Houston project. That did really well. They complimented us on all the coordination support with that. They're looking at doing it again maybe in November. So we might have another round this November. So we do expect that to become a slightly more regular thing through some of Phillips's nationwide goals. So we're excited for that. This last month, we had our ISOM neighborhood cleanup. That brought in 6,400 pounds of trash. So a little over 3 tons of trash. So that was a really good turnout. I think that's close to probably our highest ever. So that was good to see that. Next month is Buena Vista. So we'll have all the drunk trailers out in Buena Vista. They've also been coordinating with the Chamber of Commerce and the EDC on the business boot camp. So that starts tomorrow, Thursday. It's only Tuesday. I should know that because we're in a council meeting. And then, of course, they're getting ready to go to the Real Places Conference. So they're excited about that. The Downtown Project Board, a good number of them are going with them. So we're looking forward to all the information we're going to get back. And even if we don't get a whole lot of information, I think it's going to energize a lot of that group. And we're going to see a lot more progress on that. So I'm excited for that. I did also mention the TML Region 2 meeting in April is going to be here. So April's that Thursday, 16th or 17th, whichever one the Thursday is. So we're excited to have all of them here and welcome them during our centennial year. We've got a bunch of centennial swag to give them out so they can go take and promote Borger in their communities. And then on April 4th is our Easter annual Bark and Rec event. Animal Control has been taking over this, and this is also done in conjunction with the Crisis Center, because they're doing their pause for consent. So that's the other pause for consent. So we're getting a little overly reliant on pause. At some point, that's going to wear itself out, and they won't make me say it anymore. I'm just not 100% sure when that's going to wear out. We're also getting ready for the reality check event again this year. So I know if any of y'all are wanting to come help with the booth, you can get with Deidre. We've got that out on social media and stuff as well. Everybody that normally assists with that is really enjoys doing that. It is very amusing listening to the kids talk as their paycheck goes way quicker than they thought it would go. Yeah, it's they realize really quick that they don't want kids.
Yeah. They want to take them back.
And then most of the times they realize really quick that expensive car isn't so good, especially if the sheriff catches you without insurance. Yep. So we're excited for that. I think, but between the ripple effect, and the distracted driving, and then the reality check, that's a really good way that we partner with our community and try to give those kids a little heads up. Again, starting in April is our Citizens Academy. So those applications are open. So if anybody's interested in attending the Citizens Academy, we've added 2 sessions this year. So we had a couple last year that ran just a little long. I think there was too much information. So we've split off dispatch and emergency management from fire. So we'll have just fire EMS and just dispatch. And then we've separated one other. So that's it is free. We're going to be filming them this year now that we have our media specialists. So hopefully this year we'll be putting them on our website, hosting them on YouTube so that people can go back and watch the sessions anytime they want if they aren't able to come. But still, yeah, if you want, not if you want to watch it later after we get it loaded, but if you want to attend the in-class session, so we can plan on numbers. It should be a little easier now with City Hall reset this year. We'll be meeting here for most of it. Okay. And that, as you recall, when we were speccing the technology in this particular room, we added the extra cameras and microphones and stuff like that so we could start doing things like that and broadcasting them. So we'll be recording on some of that. So we're excited about that. And just kind of touching about, we did authorize that media specialist in this current budget year. And because of that, our videos are averaging over 15,000 views for the videos that we are doing. So we're getting a significant amount of engagement over what we were doing last year. So I think we are seeing some of that and getting pretty good feedback with that. So with that, that's what happened in the last month. I'll entertain any questions if anybody has any.
If not, then we'll move on to the consent agenda items 6 through 8. If anyone has any questions or comments, and if not, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve consent items 6 through 8.
Second.
And all in favor? And they pass. And item 9, receive a presentation and then consider and take appropriate action on the fiscal year 2025 annual comprehensive financial report, the audit.
Terry is sick today, so she was going to be here to kind of introduce it all, but she was having a little trouble speaking yesterday, and so today she was really having a hard time speaking, so I told her it was fine. She didn't have to come, but because she doesn't do much of the talking, I'm going to turn it over to Rob now. Rob's a Singleton Clark. He's been our auditor now for the last couple of years, and if you have any questions for him, he'll go over a few things, and then be sure to ask him any questions that you might have. So with that, I'll leave it up to Rob.
Thank you, sir. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to join you again. I apologize that it's by Zoom. I really did want to come to be there today to talk about the certificate that you got, that I'll talk about a little bit later. But hopefully next year. I did present an act for last night for another city that did get their certificate as well, and so it made it a little difficult to go from there to Borger. So I'm joining you to present for your acceptance the city's audit for the fiscal year ended September 30, 2025. I believe that the city manager has made available an electronic or bound copy of the audit in case we need to open it up for questions. But I'm going to try to be brief. I usually just talk about 3 things. I'm going to try to squeeze 2 additional things in after number 2, but those 3 things are the opinion and what it means. The second thing is how we got to that opinion. So were there other outcomes or conclusions of the audit? So were there findings, were there auditor recommendations, and or as applicable, were there audit adjustments, and what those things mean in relation to the opinion? And then we usually wrap up with a quick look at calculated reserves and the general funds ending unassigned fund balance. Can you hear me okay? There's a little feedback on my side.
Yeah, let me mute our mics until we have questions. That might help. Okay, you're good.
So I'll start with the audit opinion. It's very important to us. It's a letter at the front of the report. It summarizes what we did, what we're responsible for, what the city is responsible for relative to the audit, and then ultimately it makes a statement that covers most, if not all, of the significant aspects of the report. So the items under the opinion are the financials, footnotes, and required supplementary information. And so the audit opinion statement is that information is fairly stated in all material respects and presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, so GAAP. The technical term for the type of opinion received is unmodified, which doesn't necessarily do a good job of conveying whether it's a good or bad thing. And so we rely on the common term clean to convey that. And so the city of Borger for the fiscal year ended September 30, 2025, received a clean or unmodified opinion. Most auditees do receive a clean opinion, and so it's important to look at how we got to that opinion. And so that comes by way of where their findings, their auditor recommendations, and or where their audit adjustments and what those things mean in relation to that clean opinion. And so for the year under audit, there were no findings. We didn't have any in the prior year. We didn't make any recommendations. We did have one last year. And as far as audit adjustments, which is the most significant thing in terms of speaking to that idea of gap, there were 12, which is twice as many as last year. I think Terry had a tough year with the implementation of the new ink code. And so I'd like to see that number go down. I don't think it's an egregious number, but I would like to see it go back to 5 or 6. So as far as our aggregating those 3 things in relation to how we got to our clean opinion, I think the city got to it the way that it needs to, and that it didn't rely on the audit to bring the report to quality, rather it just verified the quality. Didn't want to squeeze in 2 little things. Garrett mentioned that you got the Triple Crown. City is responsible for 2 of those elements, and I do participate in the 3rd. And so congratulations on the budget and the PAFR. The certificate of achievement relates to the audit, and on Roman numeral page 9, you can see the certificate the city received for the fiscal year 24. And so Borger will submit this audit, and I intend to and have every belief that you'll get it again, and then that'll be in next year's audit. And that the fact that you do pursue that certificate really speaks to, and I tried to emphasize this last night with my other ACFR, in that I find myself becoming an apologist for why the audit didn't find anything. If you're going to submit for a certificate of achievement, we really shouldn't be finding anything. We should really just be verifying quality. And so the fact that we had no finding, didn't need any audit recommendations, shouldn't be a surprise. The other item that I wanted to mention, and I don't know if it's been brought up yet, is Texas Senate Bill 1851, which is going to require municipalities to complete their audit within 180 days of their fiscal year end. In the event that they do not, and the Attorney General hasn't necessarily put forward exact specifics of what constitutes completion and if it's going to have to be submitted. I was reading something this morning about that it needed to be logged with a municipal clerk or secretary, and so it's not clear, but the city does submit for that GFOA certificate, and that is required unless we take the extension by 331. So non-compliance as far as not having completed would be that there's an inability to raise your no new revenue rate. So the last thing that we normally take a look at is a quick analysis of calculated reserves in the general fund's ending unassigned fund balance. The general fund is the fund of last recourse, and so it's important to look at where that reserve value is. And so to accomplish this, we take the total expenditures in the general fund for the year under audit, remove capital expenditures, divide by 12, and then divide that into your ending unassigned fund balance. And so last year when we had this conversation, it was exactly 3 months, which is the lower end of our recommendation. We recommend that you have between 3 and 6. And so when you do the math year over year, the average monthly expenditures are about 1.5. I think it was 1.53 last year, 1.54 this. You're at 2.7, so just slightly below that 3. But I don't have any concerns as far as that amount of reserves. Before I summarize and ask for any questions, I would just like to take a moment to thank council for allowing us to serve as your independent auditor. We'd like to thank finance for all of their help in conducting the audit. That Terry is feeling better soon. So thank you for that. So in summary, clean opinion, gotten too well the way that they should. No findings, no recommendations, 12 adjustments I'd like to see that number go down. And then a healthy fund balance in the general fund as far as unassigned with about 2.7 months. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, I just want to, okay, so 12 adjustments. I mean, can you kind of explain that?
So like, we switched to Encode 10 this year, and we talked about that, and that drove some, that the way that Encode 10 classifies some things and some the way the data came over wasn't necessarily as clean as maybe we would have liked it, and it took us a little longer to see where things were at. So it required those 12 journal adjustments, which they're in the back of the letter that you have in front of you, where we just had to reclass and remove things. So it wasn't an error per se. It was just they were in the wrong areas, and we had to reclassify things to make everything balance. So I do expect that to be better next year.
Has it been better in the past? Because I don't remember.
We did 6 last year, which was still on Encode 9, and then like it doubled this year, but I think most of those were tied to that switch. We have a lot of things in place now that we can do. The new software has more functionality, and it's got ways of us running reports differently, which will allow us to catch those things earlier. So I expect next year to be significantly lower. Like, I know Rob says 6 is good and he'd like 6. I'd like none, but I think 4 or fewer would be better. And I think, as we go through this, Terry learns something every year. And then as we get with the software, we get better at the software every year too. So I do expect that to be better. And so what those words just changes to make the statement classed right. And so
Clearly stated.
Yeah.
So the 12 have been fixed?
Yeah, they're already, the financials that you've seen in that book are there. He's just telling you those were 12 things that we made after the end of the fiscal year based on our audit.
But they were all fixed to the software change?
Right.
Okay.
Most of them. And then I will just kind of touch base on the reserve balance again. Just keep in mind that we've increased expenditures quickly because we added EMS as a whole nother service.
Right.
So EMS this year was $2 million worth of expenses that, 3 years ago we didn't have. The reserve, that 25% reserve on those $2 million expenses is $500,000. So we're going to continue to try to save money each year and put some more back into that reserve. But that's part of why that reserve percentage has gone down.
Now we're at 2.7 of 3 months reserve.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still pretty good. It's still over $4 million as a number that,
That
the-
between both funds?
between just general fund.
Just general fund.
Yeah. The water sewer is still well above their requirements. So, citywide, worst case scenario, we've got money to transfer if that emergency would happen. But I just kind of wanted to remind you that, in a normal year, our expenditures would maybe only go up by inflation or, what COLAs we're giving. It's unusual for a city to take on an entire new expense category.
Also the entire county.
Yeah, and we did get revenue to help offset that, but that expense is what is tied to our reserve percentage. So, when we
That is something we're going to work on in the next budget.
well, generally we balance a budget and then we hope that we can perform better and put the money at the end of the year to balance that. So, because the way to get it up would be to balance, to budget a surplus. And so to catch up, we'd need about $600,000. So we'd have to, that would half our capital investment. So we generally haven't been trying to budget that surplus. We've been trying to manage that surplus throughout the year. Does that make sense? So control expenses so that we have a surplus at the end of the year, but not budget the surplus. And so keep in mind that like in 2018, the 28%, or when we first went to 28% of our expenses was $3.8 million. Now it's 4.7 or something, and we're at 4.2. So overall, we've still got 2.7 months of reserve.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay. I was trying to figure out how it was.
Almost 3 months, it's not quite. If it was horseshoes, we made it.
I mean, we did, you know, when it got up, we tried to spend it down on capital.
And we
I
did.
don't know if that was a great thing.
We
but-
spent a lot of money last year without having to take debt because we did spend some of that down. But if you notice, the net position is still up. So, you know, we actually, it went up, which means that we invested more in capital than depreciation and other costs. So we still benefited the city's overall financial picture last year, even though maybe the cash balance came down a little bit. And part of that was we did authorize, I thought we'd have enough money. We were a little behind on getting some things done with the software transition. So we did spend a little over $100,000 on the skate park, which we probably didn't really have the funding for, but I think likely the council would have authorized to do that anyway. So, I mean, most of it, the fact that the net position went up shows that we were investing the money in capital assets that then get added to the balance sheet versus expenses that wash away.
Right.
Other questions for Rob or anybody else?
Did a good job.
Thank you all.
Like we might have lost him.
I'm set.
Oh, no, sorry.
He just looked froze.
So,
Thank you.
but other than that, I mean, I
Thank
would
you.
really like to recognize the finance team. You know, that it's a lot of work going through the audit. It's especially even more work when you've got a whole new financial system that is only working about 80%. So, you know, it's, I
guess 12 is a good thing then, going through that.
yeah, it's, and like I said, I think overall the new process and everything in play, I mean, everything's working smooth now and we've fixed a lot of things. I mean, we're putting in POs quicker and we're recording credit cards quicker. So, I mean, like the financial statements that you're seeing on a monthly basis now are more accurate than they probably ever have been. So overall, it's been good, but it's been a process.
And there was one recommendation. Seemed like maybe that was
I think we
before.
did away with a lot of credit cards.
Yeah.
honestly, didn't
Yeah.
we?
Yeah, and that's one of your performance measures. We're down under, I think we're finally under 40% of transactions being on purchasing cards. So we have been working through that, and we've talked about some other changes coming up in the budget next year. So we definitely have good two-way back and forth with Rob and his team and our team, and we definitely make improvements, I think, every year, and I think it gets a little easier for everybody every year.
Okay, well, if there is no other questions, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to accept the fiscal year 2025 annual comprehensive financial report.
Second.
And all in favor? And it passes. And item 10.
Thank you,
receive-
Rob.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
Receive and accept the fiscal year 2025 popular annual financial report. Ms. Thomas, I don't know why I said Thompson. Ms. Deidre.
Ready?
Hi.
To a good point as to why we need a popular annual financial report. There's a lot of really great information in our ACFR, but it's kind of hard to read. And so that's really where the importance of a popular annual financial report comes in. This kind of takes the information that you receive in that presentation and it breaks it down where it's a little bit more digestible for the general public. Really what a lot of our taxpayers are wanting to know is what our finances look like, what we're spending our money on, the expenses, the revenue, and then what our departments are up to. So that's covered in all of this. We were fortunate enough to receive the GFOA award for the PAFR as well, which is part of the Triple Crown Award. But one of the comments that they had given us for the fiscal year 2024 was they would like to see more information surrounding deferred assets in the next year's PAFR. So we've actually included that as well.
I laugh. That's how you know that there's still accountants that are reviewing it. Because it's supposed to be easy.
It's supposed to be
and
easy,
understand, but
yeah.
then they want more details on deferred assets, which probably most people don't
Yes.
have an idea what a deferred asset is.
Which is funny because Garrett and I kind of had that conversation. I've contemplated in years before putting that in there, but it is kind of hard to understand. So I did the best I could with this, but yeah, welcome any feedback. look through it and let me know what you think. And for the general public, these will be available once everything is solidified with our audit. We're ready to go with it. We'll make a mass publication of this. We'll have them available for you to pick up in person, or we can mail them to you. They'll be available here at City Hall. We'll have a PDF version of it available on our website, and then also an ebook available. So plenty of opportunity and ways to read through it.
All right. You have any questions for Deidre?
I will kind of add, just with the audit, the one thing that was changed in all of this, I know that because when we've got the first numbers that I'd put in the memo that y'all had, they were a little off because we implemented GASB 101 this year, which is related to compensated absences. So they're requiring us to create a liability for vacation and sick leave that we might have to pay out. And so that that added a liability of about $1.8 million. Now, the likelihood of us, that is assuming that everybody in the city that they quit at the same time and we had to pay them and they all qualified to have their vacation bond. And so now the likelihood of that ever happening is not ever going to happen, but we had to quantify it now as a liability. And so that's where that $1.8 million of compensated absence is. So without that, the fact that our net position went up about $1 million, or it was a little under $1 million,
yeah.
that was after we had to take $1.8 million off of it because we have a new liability that we didn't have before.
No, that'd be a yearly thing.
It'll be on there going forward. So next year, it should even out going forward because we'll be updated every year now. But it wasn't on there in previous years, so we all of a sudden had a new $1.8 million liability that hadn't been on the books before. And depending on the city, it's we don't ever pay out sick leave now. When you leave, sick leave is just forfeited. Vacation, we pay out 2 weeks if you're vested and you give 2 weeks notice. And then we pay out 80 hours. We don't pay out your full balance unless you retire. So if you retire, you pay your full balance. So some cities are more generous with this, and bigger cities that might be a bigger impact. Dallas has like 20,000 employees, so their uncompensated their compensated absence liability is probably hundreds of millions of dollars, and the likelihood of 10% of their staff leaving is probably high, so that can have multi-million dollars worth of impact. So I can kind of see where they're coming, but when you're looking at that, it's the complicated thing with the audit is a lot of those are non-cash liabilities. They look like it impacts cash, but it doesn't impact cash. There's nothing really tangible. And so like a lot of that, like vacation time, if you take vacation time, we've budgeted that. It's part of your salary. So it's not like it's an added cost. And so even if you quit, it takes us more than 2 weeks to fill that spot. So the vacation that we paid you out is going to be earned by the fact that spot is open for 4 to 8 weeks in some cases before we get that position filled. So it doesn't really have an impact on us, but it does have an impact on the financials because of that, and that's why the net position didn't go up. It looks like we spent, $40 million and only got $600,000 of positive gain, but in reality, we got closer to $2.5 million of positive gain, but had to give $1.8 million of it back for the possibility of having to pay out those absences.
That's this question. I know it sounds weird. For the 1.8 million that is set back aside, is that into a separate account where we can draw it?
It's not cash.
It's not really there.
It's
allotted, but it's not.
It's a non-cash item, and so that's why it's when Rob and I get along really well, and even Terry, and but those when we have debates, it's a lot of times on how we want to handle the non-cash items, which I call intangible. Like in theory, we're supposed to be budgeting depreciation, but if we budget an expense in the budget for depreciation, it's going to generate income on the other side. So where do we move that money? And we don't have the cash to move it, so it's a non-cash transaction. So we don't normally budget on the cash because the budget is cash. So we don't budget for depreciation and we don't budget for uncompensated absences. They show up on the balance sheet because they're non-cash.
Any questions for me? All right.
Thank you, Deidre.
Other than that, if you look at the net position and especially the net position chart, our net position has gained every year for the last 10 years, which means that our assets and our value, the assets over liability, continue to improve. So our assets are valued more than the liability that we issue. So we're replacing assets quicker than they're appreciating, which is generally good. When you see cities' net position going down, they're deferring investment in capital assets, and eventually that
Puts them in their assets.
it piles up and creates a bigger issue long term. So the fact that that's been going up, and in that time frame we have issued debt, but that also shows that when we do issue debt, it's going into an asset, which then has a offset to the liability. And then it also shows that we're paying down debt quicker than depreciation. So when we talk about debt issuance and some of the projects coming up, we generally issue debt for 20 years, but most of those physical assets have a 25 or 30-year life. So we do pay down debt quicker than depreciation, which helps benefit that bottom line.
Does anyone else have anything else? And if not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to receive the City of Borger fiscal year 2025 Popular Annual Financial Report and authorize its submission to the Government Finance Officers Association for award consideration.
Second.
And all in favor? And in item 11, receive the annual tourism report from the Borger Chamber of Commerce, and then take appropriate action on a tourism service contract for the period April 2026 through March 2027. Ms. Tate?
Good afternoon, Council. First of all, thank y'all for continuing to entrust us with this funding each year. I think over the last 2 to 3 years, Garrett and I've worked closely to be able to monitor where all of those dollars go. We have been able to increase this year our grants, if you will, to $30,500. We have several that we have funded over and over for many years, and we're happy to do that. But we also brought in 3 new events this year that, of course, helps our tourism and hotel occupancy tax fund. So the new one this year were Friends of Lake Meredith. We helped with their 4th of July celebration. We also had the first time Boomtown Comic Con, and that was a huge success, and looks to be that way again this year. And the last one, we added the Canadian River Cowboy Church Youth Rodeo Camp. So we were pleased to include those. So we had, based on their applications, we believe we had 5,200 nights of hotel stays for those grants, and then an estimated 35,908 meals locally during those events going on this year. So we're excited about that. Our building maintenance costs were $14,057. I'll just go ahead and say $6,500 of that was a plumbing issue. We had a pipe collapse, and it was a little costly to get that repaired. Other things, our utilities combined were $5,963, and our annual building and business insurance was $95.61. So I think we did a good job with our funding, and we'd be grateful if you all would consider funding us again next year.
Anyone have any questions for Sophie?
Is this the only funding you get?
Oh, no, we also have membership dues. We get sponsorships for our events, and we have attempted to write some grants, which we have not received yet, but I'm hopeful forever.
State law.
I'm not
limits how
supposed
this
to say
money can be
that.
spent, so it can't be spent to support the chamber. It can be spent to support the visitor center. So we designate the chamber as a visitor center, which is why their building expenses and stuff come to it. But the service agreement and the money is to offset them providing the visitor services for the community.
I was
So-
always under the impression that the chamber was separate from the city.
It is. And
It
so
is.
what you're seeing in front of you is their tourism budget. So they've got the money we give them from the hotel occupancy tax has to be accounted for separately and only related to those services. So they have an operating account, and like their membership dues and all their other revenue and all their event revenue and all that stuff goes into there to fund the chamber. So this money isn't per se funding the chamber, it's funding the contract services that are that are in that contract. And I forgot to attach the contract to your agenda, but to answer questions and mainly to provide the grant. And so of that $75,000 last year, they gave $35,000 of it back out to groups that meet the criteria for tourism related events, and then just supporting the visitor center. Does that kind of make sense?
Trying to picture where the visitor center is at.
Is the chamber office.
So it's our chamber office. But these grants that we provide, they have to meet the Texas two-step under the hotel occupancy tax laws. First has to put heads in beds, and then it has to, what's the second part, Garrett?
It's got to meet one of the 7 categories.
Yes, one of the 7 categories, I'm sorry. And so when you see this breakdown on here, the advertising, we, that's one of the approved, promoting the arts, sporting events. I think there's one for conference registration, which we have not utilized. And I think there's one more, permanent signage, and we have only utilized funds for that one time. And that's when they did the Borger mural over on 3rd Street.
And the rodeo, is it funded through that, you said?
A portion of it is, we give them $4,000. They bring in about 65 volunteers who stay for 4 or 5 days, depending on what their role is at the camp. And so they use the hotels. The kiddos stay out at Graceland East, excuse
Some
me.
people brought out their own campers and stuff and stayed there.
Yeah, some do bring out their own, but we also, the group also contracts with the Ambassador, but more recently they've moved over to Holiday Inn Express. And so not everybody has a camper or that sort of thing, yeah. Because they usually have about 150 kids and, I don't know,
And the sporting events,
75, 80 volunteers.
for the sporting events to meet, more than half of their attendees have to be from outside of Hutchinson County.
Plus one.
So I said more than 50%.
Oh, that's, yeah.
But so those are really easy because we know exactly what number of participants aren't from the region, to where some of the others, they're not that stringent, but they're also kind of more intangible on that. But so like that and the Borger Youth Basketball Tournament, they have to submit their
They have
registrations to confirm that more than half of the teams are from outside of the county, just like the youth, the rodeo did. So those are
I've had nothing but good reports on the rodeo stuff for a couple of years now. So.
Well, and they're all very good programs, and I think promote tourism in our community, and we're happy to be part of that. So
the hardest part we have a lot of times with that is understanding that it is that 2-step. A lot of people, well, this will put heads in beds. Well, okay, that's great. That's one part. But now which category does it support? And so we've had some, generally that's where we have issues with the high school reunions wanting to use that money.
yes,
Yes, they put heads in beds, but they don't generally support the arts. They're not open to the public. They don't support historic preservation or restoration. They don't. It's not a sporting event. So, they don't meet any of those other criteria. So yes, they put heads in beds, but they don't meet all of that. And then sometimes if it's a local event, yes, you might meet all of one of those 7 categories, but then you don't put heads in beds.
So, and I think with Garrett's good guidance and our training on the Texas two-step, we have been able to weed out those kinds of grants that many years ago were funded. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
If there's nothing else, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to accept the Chamber Annual Tourism Budget for the period of April 2025 through March 2026 and approve a new tourism service contract for the period April 2026 through March 2027.
And all in favor? And it passes. And item 12, receive the annual tourism report and then consider and take appropriate action to approve a tourism service agreement with the Tri-City Community Concert Association. Mrs.
Thank you,
Flanders.
Mayor and
Judy
council
Green,
members.
and-
Yes, I've given you our report, kind of a rundown of our last season. We're getting ready to have our last concert next Tuesday, and it's this French-Canadian family. They teach their kids to step dance as soon as they can walk. So we're going to have quite a few people on the stage, and we're looking forward to that. I think it'll be very entertaining. Also, I mentioned that we've already set our concerts for next season, but we don't have dates, so we can't print our brochure yet. But I did give you a handout of what we're going to have next year. So, are there any questions?
Well, hopefully they have better rhythm than I have.
I think they do. I don't know. I don't know about yours, but I've seen them perform, so they are very good.
On the financial impact, it says that the concert association receives 7.5% or a maximum of $25,000 annually.
Yeah,
Does
and
it get you with the maximum every year, or?
well, this year we got over the maximum, and I don't know exactly. I think it had to be the way the payments fell.
They were late with some. Like 3 years ago, a quarter got off, so they got 5 quarters in a year instead of. And so a couple years ago, they had 3 quarters, which is why it looks a little funny. But.
Yeah.
Okay, just asking.
Is there anyone else have anything? And if not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move the fiscal year 2027 tourism agreement between Tri-City Community Concert Association and the City of Borger be approved and submitted.
Second.
All in favor? And then item 13, receive the annual tourism report and then consider and take appropriate action
Is
to
it the
approve
same thing?
a tourism service agreement with the Friends of the Hutchinson County Museum. Ms. Flanders.
So I've got another hat on now, and I've presented you with our report, and we really appreciate the funding that we get from the City of Borger. It makes possible our doing some programs that we probably couldn't do otherwise. And I just recently heard that we had the most people visit the museum in October than any other month, and that was because we had a quilt show. And a lot of those people are from out of town. Now, they don't probably have heads and beds, but they do come, probably eat a meal here at least.
I don't remember. I think it was the week before or the week after last year.
I was just asking if it coincided with the Boomtoberfest that we had.
Well, it goes on the whole month of October. So, you know, some of those people could come see the quilts and then stay for whatever activities we're having. Yeah.
I was just thinking about one hand worse than the other on that thing.
Yeah, that'd be good if we could do that.
Does anyone else have anything?
I kind of do.
Okay.
It's not from Miss Flanders. I read this as receive the annual tourism report. Is that what we're hearing when they describe what?
Yes, what we did with the money. Yeah.
That's what I suspected.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
If there's nothing else, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move that the fiscal year 2026 tourism agreement be submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
I'm ahead of myself. I'm thinking at the same
Any
time.
opposed? Steve, I didn't see your hand.
Well, it didn't come up as high. It was up.
Okay, so item 14, consider and take appropriate action to award a bid for the 2026 Group Seal Coat Program to Ronald R. Wagner and Company, LP, the low bidder, at a cost of $3.12 per square yard. Mr. Spradling.
So this will be our 3rd year that we've participated with the Park Hill Group Seal Coat project. You know, the goal there is to get the regional cities together, bid it out to get a more favorable bid as a larger project than what we could get individually. So far, that's been pretty successful. In 2024, it was bid at $3.39 per cubic yard. Last year was $3.27 per cubic yard, and this year the low bidder was $3.12 per cubic yard. So it's been one of the few things that we've done that's actually gone down. Now, luckily for us, I think that bid that, or I don't think, I know that bid was submitted prior to the recent volatility in oil products. So I still think we're getting the good part of this. This is a different contractor last year. The previous 2 years have been Missouri Petroleum. This is another, Ronald R. Wagner and Company is another pretty good size company. Park Hill has experience with them, so they do feel that they're able to meet that. We did expand our seal coat program this year, with 10th Street finally finished. We've had more resources to do that. So you'll notice that we've got a pretty substantial project this year that includes Lakeview Street, Loma Linda Street, Linden Street, Laramie Street, Wilshire Street, Inglewood Street, Maple Street, Walnut Street, Bulldog Boulevard, Airport Road, Timberlake Street, St. James Street, Willowick Street, Mimosa Street, Fairview Street, Cottonwood Street, Pecan Street, Chaparral Street, St. John's Road, House Street, Tierra Alto Street, San Juan Way, Mohawk Street, Avalon Street, East Auckland Street, Elm Street, Pinion Street, Hillview Street, and Opal Street. So all of that with this bid comes in at $336,769. We did have $472,517 budgeted in our right-of-way line item in the TUF fund for 2026, and we'll talk about where the rest of that's going to go in the next line item.
You just mentioned the oil thing that's going on. Big bump is for like that bump for the fire department and all this stuff for once awarded, this is it.
It should be said. And I will say that generally oil prices impact asphalt less than like fuel and some of that stuff. Keep in mind that most of our oil, we produce enough domestically and this won't happen until September. So, you never know what happens, but they are locked in. It'll be up to the contractor. What will likely end up happening, we're going to get this price this year, and then depending on how long they stay up and how much the contractors took a hit, you might see that price factored into our bids next year.
And Garrett, I know I ask this every year, but I feel like as a citizen, I'd like to know this. So, what can you? Is this done by that? It is done by the street survey
to a certain degree. So now you're starting to see us do more of neighborhoods. Because as we've addressed the high priority, the based on score and traffic count, we've done most of those now. So now we get more efficiency by doing streets that are close together instead of being random. So now there are some that are still called out. So that's the reason that airport
still called out on that survey.
Right. So like Airport Road, and if you've been to the airport off Airport Road, I think you can understand that one definitely needs it. St. John's Road is low traffic, but it needs some improvement. But that also ties into we were doing Bulldog Boulevard, which has the high traffic count and the condition assessment to warrant it, and then Opal Street, connecting Wilson to Roosevelt. So those are kind of the ones that the street assessment kind of called out, which would have been next in line. But while we're doing that, we're filling in where the neighborhoods are. So this will, for the most part, take care of all of Buena Vista except like Buena Vista. So next year we'll do Buena Vista and another area or two, depending on how it lays out. But, we've already hit when we looked at the traffic counts and all that stuff. So with the reconstruction, we've done 10th, we've done Union, we've done Main Street, we've done Broadmoor Street, we've done McGee Street, we've done Hedgecote Street, we've done 6th Street. So we've done what you would traditionally think is the high traffic areas that are under our control.
And those have just been either seal coated or this next, what we're going to talk about on the next item, right?
Right.
Okay, so I was kind of remembering on that survey, there was some streets, like Kent, where you had to take it down to, are those being scheduled, do those get scheduled in, or is that just because it's so expensive?
Generally, 10th Street was the only one that was really identified as needing reconstruction, at least with the traffic count that warranted it. So you're seeing $3.12 for chip seal. The microsurface in the next one's a little over $5 a square yard. Mill and overlay, which is where you pull up the old and put down fresh hot mix, is about $22 a square yard. So it's 5 times more than chip sealing. And then reconstruction, like what we did to 10th Street, is like $50 a square yard. And so I think that's just something, luckily, most of our streets aren't, we have chip sealed regularly, especially way back in the day when the city the city used to chip seal every street every 5 years regardless, and did that for a number of years. So most of our streets aren't, they might have some ripples in them and they might not be as smooth as people want, but the base and the road isn't failing. And so it's kind of hard to justify $22 a square yard just to fix some smoothness. Now, as we keep expanding our microsurfacing project, because you remember, if you remember the pictures last year, that does get dragged. So it fills in some of that. And so that's kind of why we're sampling, where it makes sense to do that and where it doesn't. It's definitely can be a smoother, better finish, but it's also more expensive. So we're trying to,
But those streets are in line in that, I mean, even though we may not do the
We might-
extent that needs it, that it's called out. Or
Right.
whatever. Okay.
because a lot of the ones that the traffic study warrants reconstruction on, the probably traffic count does not.
Right. That makes sense.
And so, it's, I don't feel good coming and asking y'all for $1 million to redo 2 blocks of a residential street that averages 4 cars a day.
Okay. Thank you for that.
And by doing this also, it'll keep the roads in better shape so they won't fail as fast.
Right. And most of, and even seal coating, like, the last couple of years, the seal coating's actually improved the ride qualities. I've been surprised on how much it's improved the ride quality on the streets that we've done. And most of the streets that we have issues with, it's where, we've had water cuts and had to go back in and patch. And this,
Yes.
when we do that,
Yeah.
this will coat it and give it a more consistent feel. So we're making good progress at the rate we're going now. I think in another 5 years, we'll probably have the rest of the city streets seal coat, chip seal that have not yet been chip sealed. So, I mean, we should have a project about like this every year. We might not be able to fund as much microsurfacing every year. We'll talk about that in the next session, but we're going pretty good. I mean, this is in reality is getting 3 neighborhood areas completely chip sealed. So we're going to see more, but we have already hit, because we hit Galahad already. We've hit K, we've hit Evergreen, we've hit Bryan in front of the high school. I mean, we've done most of the high traffic ones.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? If not, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to award the bid for the 2026 roof seal coat project to Ron J. Wagner and Company LP, and authorize the city manager to execute the construction contract in amount of, $336,769.68.
All in favor? And it passes. And item 15, consider and take appropriate action to approve a bid for the fiscal year 2026 micro surfacing project in the amount of $425,548.86. Intermountain Slurry Seal Inc., utilizing TIPS Cooperative Purchasing Contract Number RFP-205-0503. Mr. Stradlin.
So, last year we did a kind of a first test sample of some of this microsurfacing. So that was on Wilson Street from McGee all the way to Florida. And then we resurfaced all of Roosevelt Street with it. So far we've been pretty pleased with that. That seems to be holding up pretty well. And, it does give a more finished appearance. So this year we're wanting to go a little more on that. So the streets proposed for this are Lakeview Street, mainly because that's the main drainage way. The stormwater, all the stormwater from most of Buena Vista flows down Lakeview Street into the pond there, and then as the pond fills up and down into the creek. So having that smoother finished surface on top of the chip seal will make sure we don't wash off all the chip as easily and keep it flowing. Then also Opal Street from West Wilson to Roosevelt, so that's getting a chip seal. So then we would come in over and top coat it with the microsurface like we did on East Wilson. We did that on Wilson from Maine to Florida. So technically that's what they call a Cape seal, where you put down the chip and then you put down the final smooth coat on that. That mainly to kind of give us a test sample there of that Cape seal on another high traffic street. And Opal is kind of one of the main feeders to the college from Wilson Street. So that will give us all of Roosevelt. with that nice finish, and then Opal Street with that nice finish. Then also Main Street from 3rd to 10th. So we'll come in and microsurface, that's all the downtown area from 3rd to north. It'll cover up the fog seal chip that we have from 7th to 10th, and then recoat all of this in the downtown area. So that's a pretty cheaper way of doing that. And then also 6th Street from North McGee to Florida. So that's another one of those high traffic areas that's that it's got some of the roughness because of all of the traffic on it. And we have chip sealed 6th Street like 3 times in the last 10 years because it is such heavily trafficked that we think this would be a good option for it. And so that will also tie into the new intersection that we're going to redo on Main Street and kind of improve the ride surface there. So like I said, overall, a little over $5 a square yard for this. So with what we had budgeted, we had $135,748 left in that right-of-way fund from what we budgeted versus what the chip seal project was going to be. But we entered this fiscal year with a fund balance of $754,947 in the transportation fund. So if we apply the extra funding that's in that, it will still leave us an ending fund balance of $465,156 for other unforeseens or the 6th Street intersection. So I still think we're in pretty good financial condition. Generally, the feedback from the council's been and the public is streets. So since we've got the money, we're wanting, and that's what this money's, it can only be used on the streets. So we're wanting to expand that a little bit more. And I think then we'll have a little bit extra next year to kind of do one more really big year of extra stuff. So that's all I have on that. If you have any other questions.
You said that doesn't include 6th Street right now?
This does.
It does.
Yeah.
Are they gonna do that intersection at the same time, or?
No, the intersection will probably be first because the Intermountain won't come in until after the chip seal. We've been doing chip seal in the September-ish timeframe. It depends on when the contractor will get mobilized. There's a chance that maybe this contractor will get here earlier depending on what their TxDOT load is. Last couple of years, Missouri Petroleum's had a bunch of big TxDOT projects too. So they've worked us in between where they're doing their TxDOT projects. So it's still a little early to know when timing is, but these will be late summer projects.
Anyone else have anything? If not, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve, excuse me, the bid submitted by Mountain Slurry Seal Incorporated for micro surfacing service in the amount of $425,548.86 using TIPS Cooperative Purchasing Program Contract number RFP 250503, and to authorize the city manager to execute the construction contract and any other documents necessary.
All in favor? And it passes. And
I'm about to choke.
yeah, you are. That's a lot of money, huh?
Well, I was about to say, he did just spend $500,000.
Yeah, exactly. At least it was on streets. Item 16, schedule a public hearing and then consider and take appropriate action to introduce on first reading ordinance O-002-26, renewing the standard of care for youth programs. By the way, I was told to talk into the microphone. So.
Tell him he can turn up your microphone.
Oh.
So we do this every year. Part of the Summer Park Rec program is, since it is a program for children to not have to be licensed by the state, we have to adopt standards of care for youth programs. And we do have to have a public hearing for that every year. This is, I think, the 6th year we've done this. There's still no changes as part of the ordinance. There are we send all the park rec aides to first aid and CPR class, and then we've got all the criteria for that. This is just kind of a normal housekeeping. I would have normally put this in a consent item, but since we've got to schedule a public hearing, it can't go in the consent items. And then we'll have the public hearing at the next time. But like I said, 6 years in a row, if you have any questions.
Good program.
If there's no questions or or comments, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to direct the city secretary to schedule a public hearing for Tuesday, April 7th, 2026 at 6:30 PM, and then introduce on first reading ordinance number 0/002-26, renewing the standards of care for the youth programs.
All in favor? And it passes. And at this time, we will be going into executive session in compliance with Chapter 551, Texas Government Code, Open Meetings Law. The board will retire into executive session related to Section 551-.074 for discussions regarding personnel matters, discuss the employment, annual evaluation, dismissal, and/or compensation package of the city manager. And I didn't know. Jared, will you write the time down?
I did.
Okay.
covers, we'll be all right. Y'all,
Let it burn.
yeah,
Can you do let it burn?
that's what that man was singing that day.
Yeah, no, sir, you haven't quite got it.
The time is now 3:38, and we have returned from executive session where we completed the city manager's evaluation and no action was taken. At this time, I will entertain a motion related to the city manager's evaluation and compensation.
I move that based on the annual salary and performance evaluation, the city council approve an increase in the city manager's annual base salary in the amount of 8%.
I second.
And all in favor? And it passes. And at this time, we will consider and take appropriate action to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
And all in favor? And we are adjourned. Thank y'all for coming.
Garrett,